If you're traveling by air to a model contest or show, it can be a nerve-wracking experience bringing your models with you. You've spent countless hours to get them just the way you want, and now you have to take them out into a dangerous and cruel world that seems ignorant and indifferent to your efforts. Over the past several years, I've taken my models on 8 commercial flights to 3 contests and back. I've had good success getting my models there and home again in good shape. I've found that the more time I spend preparing my models to fly, the less stressful the experience is. I want to share with you how I prepare my models for flying. I can't claim that my methods are the best way, but they've worked well for me so far. On a commercial airline flight, your options for taking your stuff are in checked baggage, the cargo hold, or as carry-on in the passenger cabin. I would not choose checked baggage for transporting fragile models. Your stuff will be dropped onto a conveyor belt behind the ticket counter for its trip to the TSA baggage x-rays, and then to the airline baggage sorting area, where it will be quickly, but probably not gently, loaded on a bag cart for its trip to the plane. Your stuff will be loaded in the orientation that it fits, and possibly with a lot of other stuff stacked on top. Every time you switch planes or reach a destination, the conveyor and bag cart rides will be repeated. If you take your models as carry-on, you will have a lot more control over how they are handled. Even so, you should still prepare for your model container to be bumped, dropped, turned over, or have other bags stacked on top. Getting your models through the TSA security checkpoint. At the TSA checkpoint, you can ask for items to be screened by hand instead of using the X-ray. I do not recommend asking for hand screening of models. The advantage of an X-ray machine is that the operator can see right through everything in your bag and clear it without ever touching it. If you ask for hand screening, the screening officer may need to unpack your container and handle your models. The officer may be well-meaning, but they aren't likely to know the best way to handle your stuff without busting off pitot tubes, antennas, rigging, and photo etch. The officer may need to test for traces of explosives. If there's a false alarm on the test, they may need to be even more thorough, searching all your stuff and you. Even if the hand check goes well with no problems, it will still take longer than simply putting your stuff through the X-ray. If all the TSA officers are busy with other tasks, you'll have to wait until one of them becomes available to do your hand check. When I fly with models, I prefer to have them screened through the X-ray. It's easier, faster, and safer for the models, but there are some potential pitfalls. When you get to the TSA checkpoint, you'll be sharing the X-ray conveyor with a lot of other people trying to get their stuff through and then get to their stuff on the other end. Bumps and jostling may happen. Someone may move your stuff before you get to it. If you have packed your models well, this won't matter. Also, keep in mind that the X-ray machine's curtains have lead inside and are a lot heavier than they look. If your container is light and not much wider than it is tall, the curtains are likely to cause your container to flip or tumble. If your container is large and light and starts to tumble, its diagonal dimension may be too large for the X-ray tunnel, and it may jam or get crushed. The TSA X-ray machines are designed with typical carry-on bags in mind. If you can put your models or model container in a carry-on bag, or if your container is sturdy and stable, the machine will process it without problems. Of the 6 times I have taken models through TSA checkpoints, I've always sent them through the X-ray inside my carry-on bag, and I've never had anything break during screening. As for TSA screening you and all your other stuff, it's a good idea to check the TSA website for what is allowed through the checkpoints. It may be frustrating if your models clear screening, but you get held up for some other reason. And that reason might also provoke more scrutiny of your models. To minimize the chances of the X-ray operator wanting to have your bag checked, I wouldn't put anything else in there besides the models, except maybe some laundry or some foam padding. If you're worried that a TSA officer is about to break something, stay calm, explain your reasons, and if need be, you can ask for the intervention of a supervisor. But be aware, it might take some extra time for a supervisor to be available. Ideally, Your first step in planning for travel should begin when you start building your model. As you build, you may find opportunities to reinforce potentially fragile parts, or there may be projecting parts that you can make detachable for more compact and less vulnerable packing. The Tamiya 1/48 F14 kit is a good example of a build that can be made much more compact for packing. Although the finished kit is quite large, the wings and horizontal tails can be slid off and on easily. On my F14 build, I added rare earth magnets to the vertical tails so that they can be detached easily. The attachment of external stores, such as bombs and missiles, can be reinforced with wire or replaced with small magnets. Walls and trees and diorama can be made detachable so that they can be packed flat. If you do make parts easily detachable, be aware that contest staff may need to move your model. You may want to make a note about any detachable parts on your entry form so that no one attempts to lift your model by a part that may come loose. Once you have basic assembly of your model complete, you can begin constructing a cradle to hold your model. I start this by cutting a piece of cardboard about the same size as the model. Next, I will glue pieces of packing or upholstery foam to the cardboard for the model to rest on. You can save foam that comes with electronic products, or you can buy it from craft stores or Amazon. You want to arrange the foam in such a way as to keep the model from moving in any direction. Make sure that delicate parts like landing gear and gun barrels are not in contact with anything. Make sure that large projecting parts, like wings, are supported so that a sudden jolt from any direction won't cause their own mass to crack open joints. I often use rubber bands, foam pads, and bamboo skewers to restrain vertical movement. If a foam pad seems too flimsy, it can be reinforced with cardboard. The coarse screws used for securing items to drywall can be used to add foam pads in strategic spots. Where you use these screws, you may need to add cardboard to reinforce the foam so it doesn't twist around the screw. If you take a screwdriver through the passenger checkpoint, make sure it's not too big to pass security. The current rule is less than 7 inches, but I recommend a stubby screwdriver so that the TSA isn't likely to stop your bag just to check the length. It's also a good idea to bring tweezers for working with the rubber bands. Be careful with suddenly releasing the tension of rubber bands so that they don't smack into delicate parts, and bring spare rubber bands in case you lose some. Next, I'll cut out a cardboard floor for the container I'm using. The cradles made for individual models can be glued to this floor. If you have a diorama built on a rigid insulation foam base, you can use the coarse threaded screws to attach it to the cardboard floor. Lengths of tape can be attached to the floor so that it can be lifted out for easier access to the models. If you have room for a second level of models, you can make cardboard or wood columns to separate the levels. Make sure that you have something that prevents vertical movement of your floors within the bag. I like to use columns of foam that the lid will compress when I close my container. You may need to reinforce these columns so that they don't flop over when compressed. Keep in mind that when packed, you want your models to be secure regardless of the orientation of your container or the direction from which a shock may come. Hard-sided luggage designed for airline travel is an ideal container for models, but you can also use a variety of other containers such as cardboard boxes or plastic bins. If you use cardboard boxes or plastic bins, make sure that you tape them shut so that if they get turned over or dropped, they don't pop open. If your box or bin fits inside a regular bag, that can give them more protection. Be aware that clear plastic bins are more brittle than other types of plastic. Whatever you use, you want it to be sturdy enough so that it won't be crushed if it gets dropped or has other luggage stacked on top. Remember, shuttle drivers, flight attendants, and other passengers might handle or jostle your container or shove one more bag into the spot next to yours. When I'm building a figure, I like to drill a hole in one leg so that I can add a wire, and I can push that wire into wood blocks to give me a painting handle. And later, if I'm building a diorama, I can use the wire to insert the figure into the diorama. When I'm making dioramas, I frequently use this rigid insulation foam for the bases. And the wire that's inserted in the bottom of the figure can be used to secure it to the base. I don't press the wire directly into the base. When you press wire into this or try to drill a hole in it, it tends to tear and you wind up with a hole that's bigger than the wire or the drill bit. So what I'll do is I'll drill a hole and put hollow tubing into the base and secure it with a gap-filling glue, not CA glue because that will melt the foam. And then the wire in the figure can be inserted into the tube and either glued in place or left loose so you can remove the figure for transportation. When I'm building an armor kit, I like to drill a hole in the bottom and then epoxy a nut to the inside, and that is advantageous in two ways. The first advantage is that I can make a convenient handle for painting and weathering without touching the model, and I do that by taking a hanger bolt and driving that into a block of wood, and then I can thread the model onto the top of the bolt. You can also use this on turrets by adding a flat sheet of plastic into the bottom of the turret. If your kit has breech detail for the gun, you might have to move the nut more to the back or off to the side. The second advantage of adding that nut to the inside of the tank is that when I build my transportation cradle, I can use a machine screw to secure it to the cradle. And I made the machine gun removable using a little piece of wire. Currently, most airlines limit the size of carry-on bags to 22 by 14 by 9 inches. For most aircraft, that is the size that will fit in the overhead bin. Those dimensions include anything that sticks out, such as wheels and handles. Be careful about the size of your container. You don't want your airline to make you send your models as a checked bag. Check your airline's website before you fly. Be aware that some smaller aircraft, used on feeder routes or shorter flights, may not have full-size overhead bins. Also, if your flight is very full and you're late in boarding, there may be no room left in the overhead bins. The flight attendants will not let you hold a box on your lap. If you can't get your container in the overhead bin or under the seat in front of you, they will make you gate check your bag. The only time I've had a model broken was when I had to gate check my bag because the aircraft had undersized overhead bins. There were 6 other models and a vignette in my bag that came through unscathed. So this is the model that broke when I had to gate check my bag. There's a piece of foam underneath to keep the weight off the axles, but I was relying only on the tension of these rubber bands to keep it located on that foam pad. And when I unpacked, I found the truck up against this foam column here. And you can see that the cab and the bed have separated from the frame. I had 2 other trucks of similar construction in my bag, and they came through fine, and I packed those a little bit differently. So for the Studebaker and the Austin, again, I have a foam pad underneath the truck to keep the weight off the axles, but I also packed it so front, back, sides, and top also have foam pads to keep the truck from moving around. And on this one I actually have pins in the foam to keep the lid from sliding around and the columns from flexing too much. Well, I hope you found the information in this video useful. Good luck and happy travels. Bye.